The other day I was asked, what's the one thing that I wish every landlord would know? And I thought about it, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I would love to share, my experiences and my knowledge on the last 20 years of being in property management. But I really pondered about that number one reason. And before I get to that number one reason, I want to go through a couple of the things that I thought about that I'm sure as a soon-to-be property owner or investor or an experienced landlord, you might have already thought about this and experienced some of it, but we'll go through it. One of the big things I've realized is you should not be so nervous about vacancy as you should about the wrong resident. I have had so many times where I have advised my owners to not take a particular resident or applicant, and because they were so afraid of vacancy, which vacancy costs money, I get it, but they were so afraid of vacancy that they said, Jenny, I'm okay, let's take that resident. And then when that resident doesn't pay rent, or even worse, does damage to the property that's going to cost the owner thousands of dollars to fix on the re-rent, that's when it really costs money to be a property manager. So I look back at that and I remembered a couple, incidences where there was this individual that we just did not feel good about. And the owner's like, Jenny, we need to get somebody in there. I'm bleeding. I'm paying a mortgage. It's better to have some money and then have it sitting there. And a part of me completely understood. We put the individual in, and actually for a year, no problems. But then something happened with the individual's job, and the girlfriend that was living with them, which even though she was an occupant, I believe she was help support or at least give a portion of the rent. She moved out, and when she moved out, then the rent didn't come in a timely fashion. And you can always tell the red flags. That first month they're late, they've got a pretty good excuse, and then they usually pay somewhere around the 8th or the 9th of the month. Remember, rents are always due on the 1st, at least the way my leases are constructed. And so you call them up and they're like, this is my paycheck, mom died, I had a funeral, medical reasons, I've kind of heard it all. But then the next month, it's not paid on the 8th or the 9th. Now it's paid around the 24th. 25th, 26th, really getting close to the end of the month. And that's your red flag. Then you're like, oh crap, we are in for a wild ride because I do not think this person is going to be able to catch up. By the time he paid the month's rent, a week later, the next month's rent is due. And it's just going to be this vicious cycle. So needless to say, 7 days served on the 3rd month, I instructed my owner, let's not accept the rent. Let's just, when we go to court, let's tell the judge where you're not ready to accept the rent, that we just really want the occupancy of the properties. We want the opportunity to gain possession of the property back. We don't care about the monthly rent. We did that. And then when the constable came to show up, the individual would not leave, filed an emergency motion. We had to get back on the docket of the judge. When we got back on the docket, which was 3 weeks later, long story short, there's 3 months of no rent. And then the individual is extremely mad. Whatever reason, he believes it's the owner's fault and my fault as a management company, and decides to take his frustrations out on the property. So we had, my memory serves me, it was somewhere like $8,000, $9,000 that we needed to do in order to get the property cleaned up. So 3 months of lost rent, the eviction costs on top of it, and then the cleaning up of the property. Simple answer, that could have been avoided if you choose the right resident. And again, the right resident is just somebody who raises their hand and says, hey, I can't pay this month, so you know what? I gotta get out. Or I can pay late this month, but next month I'm gonna be in trouble, so I gotta get out. You want somebody who's going to tell you the truth, because you can resolve the problems and at least protect the owner if the resident is honest with you. And so that's what I mean when I say don't be afraid of the vacancy, be more afraid of a bad resident. So that's one of the things I was thinking about. The second thing is, and this one I see a lot, more than I thought I would see in property management. Your rental is a business. It's no longer a property. I have a lot of owners that live in a property, decide to then transfer it and put it into the rental world. And that's great. I mean, a lot of 2.5%, 3% interest rates are out there right now. Why would you give that up if you don't have to? So if you got that, a few years back when that was part of the mortgage rates and you're sitting in your property now, why not make it a rental? That would be a super smart decision. Just remember, it's no longer a property. It's no longer your home. Cut the umbilical cord and look at it as just a business. And if you do that, you're going to not make decisions like emotional decisions. You're going to think about it. You're going to make sure that you are investing in that business the way you should. And then again, it comes down to really listening to a professional property manager, because they're going to give you unemotional suggestions. Because when I'm a property manager, I have no emotion to that property. To me, it's about protecting you, my client, in the business that you have asked me to facilitate or to manage, right? But I will give a suggestion and they'll have an emotional attachment, and then all of a sudden what I had suggested, it just goes off the rails. And the things they're asking me to do, or to call the resident about, or to have a field agent go by and check on, it's gotten a little crazy. I'll just give you one example. So we had somebody that lived in a property before he gave it to us as a rental, and I didn't know this, but he drove by every weekend, like either a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and sometimes 2 times out of the weekend. And there were some cars in the driveway and on the street. So assuming it was probably some kind of a get-together. He called it a massive party. Could have been just a get-together, a family get-together. I know that when my family, I'm a family of 5 siblings. I'm the 6th sibling, so my mom and dad had 6 kids. When we get together, when we get together at a person's house, we probably have about 20 cars, because not only do you have sometimes 2 cars for the sibling and their spouse, but you might have one of the kids that drives that doesn't want to be at the party the entire time, make an appearance and then go hang out with their kids or their friends or whatever. If you were to ever drive by my property when we're doing a family Sunday dinner, you would think we were blowing off the roof with a party. And that's just not the case. So I get this frantic call from the owner on a Monday morning. Oh my gosh, this resident, he is destroying my property. Please send somebody over. Let's get, some kind of a site evaluation. So on Tuesday, we sent over our field agent. The field agent walks in and is like, everything looks good. There's really nothing that we need to be concerned about. I report that back on a Tuesday. Now on Thursday, he is upset again. He lost sleep on Wednesday. He just knows the field agent is lying. He knows it because he drove back by and there were still some cars there. So then we did a professional third-party site evaluation. And this is a third party that sends an evaluator out. They take like 50 to 70 photos, puts it into a really nice email report with all the colored photos, sent that over to him, thought this would all just be good. But then the following Monday, because I sent that over on a Friday, and then maybe on the weekend, he just couldn't get over it. Then on a Monday, he's calling me up and he is saying, get them out. Do whatever you can. Get them out. And in the state of Nevada, you have a contract. You have a contract with that resident, and that resident is allowed to live in that property as long as they're obeying the rules of the lease, the clauses of the lease. So I explained to the owner, I don't have this ability of just kicking them out. They haven't done anything wrong. We have no proof. We have to honor this lease. And there was like another 6 months or so. Well, he didn't like that. So he decided that he was going to stalk the property. And I got pictures. He had night vision. This is when it's like a big red flag for me that maybe I do not want to be in business with this particular owner, right? And he just would not let it drop. And there was nothing really I could do. So I had a very frank conversation and I said, listen, your residents pay good money to live in the property, your property. There is no evidence that they are breaking any lease clause. There's nothing that warrants them to be served a lease violation. They're paying their rent on time, so it's not even like I can go in for non-payment of rent. So you're going to have to live with these residents because that's just what it is. You agree to it. We have a lease with them. That's what it is. I thought I got through. I thought that I understood. He understood exactly where we were going with it. And it was about a week later, I got a termination email. He no longer wanted me to manage his property. Funny story though, about 2 months later, that resident calls me and wants to move into one of our properties, another one of our rentals, understood, because when I let him know about the termination, that resident understood that, the owner had terminated me. He wants to either manage it himself or find another management company. The story that they told me, the past residents, they finally moved just because the guy stalked them, took pictures, front yard, backyard, the kids coming out of the front door, video that he would send to the residents saying, I don't know who this person is and they're living in the property, happen to be the babysitter. I mean, just crazy things. And from last I understood, I haven't really followed up, that past resident was actually taking the owner to small claims court for damages from the standpoint of having to move earlier than they thought, and a couple other things that they felt like didn't need to take place if it wasn't for the owner stalking. So long story short, when you turn your property into a rental, it is now a business. It is not a property. So cut the umbilical cord, stop stalking the residents. If they're not doing anything clearly wrong, let them live there in peace. And if you don't like them, don't renew with them on the following lease renewal. That's the best way to do it. The other thing that I was thinking about when I was trying to come up with the number one reason that I wish that every landlord knew is, I know I say this tongue in cheek, but rentals are living and breathing things. They will need repairs. And I don't know why this shocks some of my owners, but I will call them up and I will say, hey, I just got a report from the resident and the dishwasher doesn't work. It just stopped work. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, I just put in a new dishwasher. And I go back into my notes and I said, 5 years ago, you put in a new dishwasher. So the dishwasher is at least minimum 5 years old. So it wasn't just recent. And they're like, oh my gosh, that resident, I mean, they're just damaging the property left, right, and center. And 2 months ago, I had to replace the washer machine. And what else is going to happen? Well, the question is, probably every appliance at one point or another is going to have an end of life. And so as a landlord, you are going to have to replace those or fix those particular situations. The other thing to remember, as I tongue in cheek that a property is a living, breathing thing, if you have 2 AC units and those 2 AC units were put in at the time the property was built, and one AC unit kicks the bed 1 year, the second one is going to happen quickly thereafter, probably within 1 to 2 years. So it's just one of those things that you've got to understand, that rental properties are a living, breathing entity that you are going to constantly have some kind of a repair or update or rent ready, paint, flooring, things of that nature. So be ready for it. That's kind of the negative of it, but the positive is, think about the wealth that you are building when you hold a rental property. The appreciation, the tax write-offs, all the things that rental property does for you financially, even though at times you are going to have to put money into it. And that circles to my number one thing I wish every landlord knew. And here you go, drum roll. Don't chase cash flow. Focus on long-term wealth. And that is tough for some individuals. They want to know, this first year I put the rental on the market, I want this amount because I penciled it that way. I did my budget analysis that way. My spreadsheet says it should be that way. Don't chase cash flow. Look and focus on long-term wealth, because that's what the property is going to do for you if managed correctly, and if as an owner you handle everything correctly along the way. So that's the one thing after everything that I thought about. That's the number one thing I wish every landlord would know. I hope this was helpful for you.